Hello, hello! Welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan, and today I'm going to be telling you why I did not finish the book As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson and what I'm reading instead. Before we get too far into it, today's fun drink of the day is... Okay, well the whipped cream is dissolving into it as we speak, but I made a white chocolate mocha with an espresso Altisio espresso pod, and I used Torani white chocolate syrup, and it's got Oatly oat milk and non-dairy vegan coconut whipped cream, which is the faint sizzling you may hear as it melts into the coffee, but that's okay. It's pretty good. The espresso is definitely very strong, which I expected, but that is why I decided to pair it with the sweeter toppings. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's an interesting pairing for sure, but it's good. Also, I have two new pumpkins that you may have already spotted. Clearly, you can see this one. This is a big plushy pumpkin. It is super soft and comfy. I've been using it as a pillow at night. It's got kind of this wicker stem. And this is from Cracker Barrel. And then also from Cracker Barrel, I got this very small one. It is kind of a light yellowy orange. And it's just a little charm that sits here in a row with the others. All right, so a little background on As Good as Dead and my history with it. As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson is the third and final book in the series A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Now, the Good Girl's Guide series is something that I've been sort of meaning to read for many years. I think I mentioned it in a past video, but the first book I think was the only one out back when I first heard of it, and I believe it was actually my mom who recommended it to me. I had just gotten really into reading, and so she was giving me a lot of recommendations and finding books for me, and that was one of the ones she recommended to me, and so I put it on my TBR, and I'm pretty sure that was back in middle school. And when I was that young, I felt like it sounded a little too mature for me and maybe a little too scary. And ever since then, I've just kind of been putting it off and putting it off. But you may know that A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is now a series on Netflix. One night I was bored and I wanted something new to watch, and I decided to sit down and watch the first episode. And I didn't like the first episode that much. I wasn't too into it. I had my own theories right off the bat and none of them ended up being accurate, and so I was a little bummed about that in the end. But I carried on with the first season after a break between that first episode and the rest of the season. Seasons were very short. They were only about 8 to 10 episodes each, I believe. I did finish the first season and then I carried on to the second. The third season is not out yet. I don't know if it's been renewed, but there is a third book. And I finished the series, and it wasn't my favorite, but I still found it enjoyable to a degree. And at the end of the second season, there were some cliffhangers, and I wanted to know what happened next, what happened to the main character Pippa. And so I decided to put the third book on hold at my local library so that I could have the rest of the story right away. Already, there were issues. It took a very long time for the book to come in, which was fine because I was still reading another book at the time, and I was very busy with that. When the book finally did come in at my local library on hold for me, I was reading it very, very quickly. It was a very fast-paced read. I was invested, I was eager to know what happened next. One thing threw me right away though, and I have to give you context for this. The Netflix series is British, okay? It takes place in a town called Little Kilton, England, I believe. I liked it because it was like a quiet English town mystery. And then I open the book and I start reading, and they mention something about Minnesota. And I'm like, huh, that's odd. Why would someone be all the way in Minnesota when they started in England? And then I kept reading, and I found out very quickly that the book I was reading was set in Connecticut, in a town called Fairview. And I was stunned and so confused. Like, what was going on? Why does the book have such a different setting than the series? But I looked in the back, and Holly Jackson, the author, is British. I did not understand. I could not compute. And so I did some Googling, and it turns out that there are two versions of the books. There's a British version and an American version, which I think is crazy. It's a mystery book and there are courtroom trials. There is no way that you can change the entire setting of a book to a different country and expect it not to have ramifications on the plot and the events that transpire, and that is what they did anyway, and it bothered me so much. But I still wanted to read the book, and I had waited so long to get it on hold from the library that I didn't want to wait anymore to try to figure out if I could get my hands on the British version. So I just carried on with the American version, which I was really annoyed about. I replaced in my brain every time they said Fairview, I said, no, it's Little Kilton. And I just tried to carry on. So that is one thing that was already bothering me about the book. But then I think I was about a third of the way through. I had read that much already before I decided to DNF. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but I feel like there was an initial plot twist. The premise of this book so far is that Pippa, the main character, seems to have a stalker, and she's trying to figure out how to handle this, whether or not it's real. And there's some more context behind this that I'm not going to get into in this video, but she feels that it is an exceptional challenge, that after mysteries she has solved for other people and crimes she has uncovered, the threat is now personal to her. She is the one being targeted. About a third of the way through the book, right where I stopped, we learn a little more about the potential identity of this stalker. And it becomes very, very real and even more threatening and rather distressing. And Pippa's boyfriend, Ravi, the secondary character, recognizes that this threat is real, and he's trying to convince her she needs to take more protective measures for herself. And Pippa is kind of blowing him off. But based on context clues and just the way the information is presented, it seems clear to the audience that this discovery they've made about the stalker is accurate, and Pippa is very much in danger. I don't know if you noticed my shirt, but I thought it was fitting for this video. It says Unreliable Narrator. I got it from a bookshop, and Pippa is very much an unreliable narrator, which I enjoy. I liked getting to dive into her perspective in the book because we don't get to see inside her head as much in the Netflix series, of course. Also, I'm sorry my shirt is so wrinkly. I don't think it dried right when I washed it last, but whatever. I will say I accidentally spoiled about like 3 or 4 different things for this book. I recognize that there are quite a few plot twists, or at least like big things that happen, big events that you would not be able to know going into the book. I was watching edits on Instagram or something, and I don't usually do that, but I was just curious. You know, you read the comments, you look at the wrong thing, and the whole book is spoiled. But I was okay with that. Like, I've had that happen to me before, and I was still invested and wanted to keep reading. But because I knew some of the things that happened, I recognized like how big the threat was when it came up in the book. After I decided to DNF it, I did read the plot summary, and so I know what happens in the rest of the book anyway in a more complete manner. It doesn't actually sound as interesting to me as I thought it would, and I think that it is more distressing to me than I thought it would be. One thing that As Good as Dead does really well is Holly Jackson uses multimedia inserts. So she will put like images of text messages, and not in like a kitschy way either. They're very well done. And at this point in the book where I stopped reading, there was an article describing past crimes that Pippa's potential stalker had committed. And that is what really disturbed me. It was very detailed and it was very unique. I think that Holly Jackson has an excellent imagination and is the perfect person to be writing these crime thrillers. But I realized then and there that the book was going to be too dark for me, especially because I knew some things that happened later down the line. I realized that the book was going to be too dark for me, and I actually got scared of it, and I stopped reading right where I was. I got out of bed, I took it downstairs, I put it by my purse to take to the library the next day, and then I went back upstairs and like watch some funny videos or something to calm myself down, because it was definitely distressing. And that is the main reason I decided not to finish that book. I also went through right away and took a few other books off of my June TBR because I read more about them and I decided that those were also too scary. And sometimes I am able to handle that, but at this point, when I'm just trying to get back out of my reading slump, that's not the kind of thing I want to be diving into. And so I took off a few more books that I think would be too intense for me right now. Also, something that helped me was a bookstore employee recently recommended to me a website called Storygraph, which I think I've heard of before, but I'd never put to use. And Storygraph basically summarizes the book in the sense of potential content warnings and how dark it is, whether it's spicy, things like that. And so once this employee helped me find Storygraph, I was able to get a much better picture of the books I wanted to read and see if I actually wanted to invest my time in them. And so there are books that have been nixed completely from my 2026 TBR. I think I said June before, but I meant 2026, which is disappointing. But I know that those books are so well loved by other people, and they're just not for me, at least not right now. Maybe I'll go back and read them in the future, but I'm not ready to right now, and that's okay. But on to the motion of what I am reading instead. So, I think that moving on very quickly from As Good as Dead actually opened a few doors for me, and I'm very happy with where my reading has landed. One thing I am doing is I created a sort of course curriculum for myself on specific nonfiction history books of a certain historical event, and I will be making a separate video on that once I'm a little farther into them. But I don't usually read nonfiction, and that has been very exciting for me. So I will tell you about that in a future video. Immediately after I DNF'd As Good as Dead, after that I needed something new to read. And I've been into this more like witchy autumn feeling since I started my channel, especially because I've got the pumpkin theme going on. But I wanted to read another book by Adrienne Young. If you saw my 2026 TBR video, you will know that The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young has been on my 2026 TBR. And so I wanted to read that one, but it wasn't in at the library. So I put it on hold, as I do. And I noticed when I did that a different book by Adrienne Young that I didn't know existed was in at a different library that I could easily get to, A Sea of Unspoken Things. And that one I have right here, I went and picked it up right away. It was just sitting on the shelf waiting for me. Excellent. And I've really enjoyed this one so far. I'm probably about a third of the way through. Young has a very atmospheric way about her writing, and I think that her main strong suit is her settings. And so it's been very immersive to read this book. And it is a mystery, but it is not a mystery in the sense of the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. I would put it in the magical realism genre, and that is also the genre of the book I'm writing right now. And so this has been very helpful in kind of learning about how to write a good atmosphere and how to write these little hints of magical realism, and it's almost a ghost story in the way. It's very interesting. It is a fiction book, but yeah, this is A Sea of Unspoken Things by Adrienne Young. I would highly recommend this so far, and I will be filming a review of this when I finish it, which is hopefully soon. And then I actually, at that same bookstore I was talking about where I learned about Storygraph, I also decided to purchase The Unmaking of June Farrow. This is such a beautiful book. It is a gorgeous copy. It's a paperback, so it fits easily on my shelf. I haven't read it yet, but I decided I wanted to risk it and go ahead and buy it because I've really liked Adrienne Young's other books, and this one is highly acclaimed, and I think I'm really going to enjoy it. So I was able to take it off of hold at the library, and now I can read it whenever I want. So if I want a little break between the first Adrienne Young book and this one, I can have it and read this whenever I want. I have been breaking my previous rule of not buying books ever since I started this channel, but in my defense, I do have a higher paying job now. And that is basically where I'm at. I am partway through A Sea of Unspoken Things, and that review should be coming within the next few weeks. I will tell you more about this curriculum of history books I've put together for myself in the future. And I will also have a video coming out soon about bookish products I have bought recently, and you'll get to see all the things I have acquired that are not books but are book related. I still think that Holly Jackson is an excellent writer and that As Good as Dead is going to be amazing to many people. I think that in terms of just the book, not necessarily how much I enjoyed it, but how well done the book was, I would probably give it 3.5 to 4 stars, just the section I read. But in the end, it just wasn't for me right now, and I hope this video was informative so that other people can be aware of what that book contains and decide early on whether or not it's worth the read. Check out Storygraph for more, because I think that that has been a very helpful resource for me so far. Thank you so much for watching this video. Happy harvest and happy reading!